Daniel Ricciardo's start at Alpha Tauri has gone on a high note, but the latest race in Spa has shown that there's a lot more work to be done, something for which he will have to face a lot of trouble in the following period. To add insult to injury, the popular Honeybadger has now dropped a bombshell on the team, giving an honest look at the team after 2 races. Could Ricciardo's quest for a Red Bull seat end before it has even properly started? Or will he get it together after the summer break? Following a disappointing performance at the Belgian Grand Prix, Daniel Ricciardo is faced with a month-long reflection period. The renowned Spa circuit served as a harsh reality for the Australian, as his AlphaTauri's limitations were laid bare, marking it as one of the poorest-performing vehicles in the competition. Despite Ricciardo's seasoned driving experience, he remained unnoticed as the main events unfolded toward the front of the grid, a particularly striking incident being Oscar Piastri's collision with the wall at Turn 1. Adding to Ricciardo's concerns was the fact that his AlphaTauri teammate, Yuki Tsunoda, managed to secure a championship point for the 3rd time this year, propelling his vehicle to a P10 finish. Tsunoda, who employed a different racing strategy, momentarily ascended to P6 before eventually finishing in the points. Meanwhile, Ricciardo, starting from a disadvantaged 19th position due to a qualifying breach, only managed a 16th place finish. Ricciardo was left more than 23 seconds behind Tsunoda, a situation that contrasts Sky Sports F1 analyst Ted Kravitz's previous statement that the ex-McLaren driver was now AlphaTauri's team leader. Post-race, Ricciardo conceded to the difficulties of the day and pledged to dedicate the forthcoming 4-week summer break to improve his race fitness in the gym ahead of the Dutch Grand Prix on August 27th. The post-race remarks from Ricciardo and Tsunoda showed stark contrasts in their vehicles' assessments, with Tsunoda praising his AlphaTauri as flying, while Ricciardo was noticeably skeptical about the junior Red Bull's performance. Honestly, it was tough in traffic. Maybe a race with more clear air could have been better, but in general, I'm not convinced we had great pace today, he said. It felt like we never got the peak out of the tires, and we couldn't generate enough grip in the second sector. When we were in clear air later in the race, I felt we were more competitive, but in traffic it was definitely hard. The reality is, these were my first dry laps in this car on this track, and I don't know this car that well yet, so I still felt there was a little missing, but we'll figure it out. Many are now looking forward to a well-deserved holiday, but the situation is slightly different for me as the break is a good chance for me to keep working behind the scenes. After a few days off, I'll spend time in the gym and use my day's training to be able to further improve on my race fitness. To be honest, I'm hoping this is a one-race problem and he is back in form after the break. The reality is the AlphaTauri is not a good car. Tsunoda did incredibly well to get the boat anchor into the top 10, but that was also the case for De Vries, and he, as a semi-rookie, was only given 10 races to make the difference. We can all agree that Daniel has vast more experience than De Vries, in both F1 and with Red Bull and AlphaTauri. We shouldn't jump to any conclusions yet and give him some time. But De Vries, less experienced on every level, only got 10 races. It's fair to expect Daniel to do a lot better than De Vries, and complaining it's a bad car is really not relevant. And as expected, Ricciardo is not setting the world on fire. Then again, does anyone think he was intended to do just that? Honestly, his pace wasn't bad in the race, he just got stuck behind the Haas because the car has no straight-line speed. And the pace in the sprint was great, almost kept 8th if it hadn't been again for the straight-line speed against Ocon and George. And one-lap pace is good. He is where Yuki is when he doesn't get his lap deleted for track limits. His big problem at McLaren was the brakes, and he clearly already has some handle on the AlphaTauri. Analyzing the situation more thoroughly, we're witnessing an underperforming team that is in quite a precarious position and evidently in need of major restructuring. It's apparent that a team principal change is on the horizon, but that's a downstream solution. However, we are currently dealing with a situation where we have a very competent driver sitting idle, only operating the simulator and taking a single run in what is arguably the most superior car ever. This driver possesses a deep understanding of the A-Team's car, but isn't being fully utilized. Here's a proposition. Why not drop him into the midst of AlphaTauri's struggles and see what insights he can provide regarding the team's weaknesses compared to A-Team? It would be a financially sound move, and we're already paying him, and it could potentially save AlphaTauri around $1 million or so from their budget. which would otherwise be spent haphazardly trying to identify issues that he could pinpoint after a few races. But Ricciardo was honest after the race, saying how the car was limited, and despite Tsunoda's third top 10 finish of the season, AlphaTauri find themselves bottom of the constructors' standings going into the 4-week summer break. An overall lack of pace has been the key issue for their car in the first half of the season, which Ricciardo found out the hard way this weekend. Honestly, I felt quite limited in terms of pace. Ricciardo often found himself in the midst of a long DRS train that formed behind the top 10, with little chance of getting past the likes of Logan Sargent in the Williams, which has become notoriously difficult to overtake on a straight. Alex Albon proved that at last season's edition of Spa, finishing 10th ahead of a long train of cars. While points will be the ultimate goal for Ricciardo going forward, his weekend wasn't perhaps as bad as may seem from the Grand Prix result. A late lap time deletion in Friday's qualifying was the reason for his Q1 exit and unfavorable grid position on Sunday, while he gave a solid account of himself through Saturday's sprint events. He finished in P11 in the shootout and ran around the top 8-point scoring positions in the later sprint race before crossing the line in 10th. The weather, along with the nature of the sprint weekend, will have no doubt hampered his chances, as he continued to adapt to his new car with just one practice session, which in turn was wet. Ever optimistic, he looked to gain some positives going into the break. I'm keen to get back into the truck and see what we can learn from it. I don't want to be too discouraged, of course. It was our only dry session all weekend, so it could be something simple with setup we went the wrong way. I'm glad I got the race distance done. A lot to learn, lots of feedback to the team. I saw Yuki got 10th, so it looks like he had a decent race. So try to learn a bit from that as well. With Daniel Ricciardo back in the team, he will need to make sure he beats his teammate Tsunoda with better performances. If not, there are still risks lurking as he looks forward to an uncertain future with the Red Bull family. However, as reports suggest, he prioritized his fitness after he was shown the exit door from McLaren. He lost a lot of weight and toned himself up for the task at Red Bull and AlphaTauri. Furthermore, Ricciardo is believed to have taken his role more seriously than the one he was working for at McLaren. According to a former F1 team principal, he has transformed himself into a serious racing driver from Netflix's Village Idiot. Notably, the 34-year-old also took a sharp pay cut to stay in the sport. After switching from Red Bull to Renault in 2019, he got paid $36 million. But now at Red Bull Racing, he is rumored to be paid around $3 to $5 million a year. And only if Ricciardo improves could he even be in contention for a Red Bull seat. But if we're being real, Horner has said that Checo isn't going anywhere in 2024, and he's still P2 in the Drivers' Championship. AlphaTauri is struggling, and as great as Yuki is, they brought on De Vries to help build the car because they still see Yuki as junior, and Nick was an asset to building the Merc, which also hasn't been great, but they didn't know that when they hired him. Ricciardo is only there to help improve AlphaTauri, not deliver podiums. If he outperforms Yuki, that's great. They can replace Checo in 2025. What they want is a driver that can improve the whole team, like he did at Renault, and like he did with RBR. Results would be nice too, but everyone knows the car is basically undrivable in its current state. Ricciardo is on race 2, and he wasn't expected to deliver stellar results immediately, only better than Nick. Would he do that? We'll have to wait and see, but what's for certain is that Perez's place is safe for now, and Ricciardo has a tough job ahead after the summer break. Let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Do you think Ricciardo can pull AlphaTauri out of the mud, or will they stay stuck there until the end of the season? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.